Well, we were just talking about Fox in the last segment, so who better to talk to now than the director of Outfox, Robert Greenwald. He's also director of Iraq for Sale, of course, and Walmart, The High Cost of Low Price. He's the founder of Brave New Films. We're actually going to have a discussion about foreign policy with him. Robert, welcome to the Young Turks.
It's good to be with you again.
Great to have you here. So let me start with today's news. We find out from the Washington Post that 13,000 additional troops are heading to Afghanistan. But Obama's White House says it wasn't us. It wasn't us. That was the Bush administration who had sent in those troops for support, and that they're not combat troops. First, on that small note, do you believe them, or do you think this is some new troops being sent in?
Well, I try to deal with the factual area, and the facts that the Obama administration has embraced and extended the military solutions in Afghanistan. Having been working on the Rethink Afghanistan film for the last 6 months, having visited Kabul, talked to 120 people, I can say without any doubt in my mind that there are terrible problems with Afghanistan, but they will not be solved by occupying this country. And it's a road, sadly and tragically, to true terrible disaster for our country, for our values, and for everything we believe in.
Robert, you know, we've had this discussion on the show, and my take on it is that it's hard to get the guys that are causing us the main troubles, of course, Al-Qaeda, who are hiding in northern Pakistan without exerting some sort of pressure from Afghanistan. Do you think we should withdraw all of our troops from there, or does it make sense to keep some troops there to continue to exert that pressure?
Well, it's not a question of exerting pressure. It's a question of capturing terrorists. The administration has said there are 100 al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. You don't occupy a country to capture 100 terrorists. Similarly with Pakistan, whatever success we're going to have with terrorism, and remember, it's not in the old days of a country. Terrorists can be any place they want to be. They can be in a cave, they can be in Florida, or they can be in Great Britain. But to go after them, we need international cooperation. Every time we occupy a country, we alienate the population, we spend billions of dollars, and we wind up killing innocent people. It's not a way that's going to make us safer. Putting troops there has worked over and over and over again against our security interests. So it's not, it's not even there's a moral argument, there's a financial argument, but purely on a strategic argument about security, this policy is a disaster. I don't know if you saw that Carnegie report that said the single biggest reason for the resurgence of the Taliban are foreign troops.
Now, on the other hand, if we leave, Robert, of course, I'm sure you've heard this many times before because there's some truth to it. Of course, the concern is that the Taliban will then easily take over again and thinking, well, they didn't really get us the last time. So it's not like they're going to come back. We have pretty much free reign to bring in Al-Qaeda or do whatever we like.
Well, first of all, the Taliban have taken over. Depending on who you talk to, they have 60, 70, 80% of the country. When I was in Kabul, you literally couldn't go outside Kabul. And you're seeing that now. Journalists cannot leave Kabul because of the rest of the country is controlled by the Taliban. Now, let's be very clear. The Taliban have done awful things. They continue to do awful things. But that's not the argument as to why we're in Afghanistan. We're in there for security reasons. And there are tremendous differences between Taliban and Al-Qaeda. I was thrilled to finally see last week in the newspaper that the people in the administration were pushing back against the military and saying, wait a minute, they're not one and the same. The last day I was in Kabul, I interviewed 20, 25 different members of the Taliban who were actually turning in their weapons. Every single one of them, by the way, had a relative killed or injured by foreign troops. And there was tremendous opposition and animosity to Al-Qaeda, who are seen as foreign interventionists. So if we would put all of our energy and all of our smarts and all of our resources into negotiating, into figuring out what really are our security interests, I think we could accomplish a whole lot more. If at some point we decide the Taliban are our enemy and we want to go to war with them, that's a different story. But we...
That's... You know, sometimes Skype works wonderfully, and sometimes it runs into a little bit of issue. I really wanted to hear him finish that thought. All right, guys, are we going to try to get him back on through Skype, or should we just call him again?
I'm hearing you okay.
Oh, there you are. You're back. Okay. Sometimes technical issues get in the way. But you were saying about them being injured by foreign troops and Taliban and Al-Qaeda being different?
Yes, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know when the Skype cut out, but when I was there, I talked to many members of the Taliban who had tremendous animosity to Al-Qaeda, and the Carnegie Report and others over and over again talk about how the Taliban are coming back because they're a nationalist organization. They need a foreign enemy in order to organize. They're not an international terrorist organization. They do awful things, but they're not committed to, taking out people all over the world.
So, we're talking to Robert Greenwald. He's the director of Rethink Afghanistan. It's a documentary about Afghanistan. Let me ask you a quick question about the movie, and then I want to come back to the idea of what happens if we leave. What was the principal lesson you learned in shooting Rethink Afghanistan?
Well, for me, the biggest lesson was how profound and deep-seated the problems in Afghanistan are. Third poorest country in the world, desperate for jobs, desperate for roads, desperate for teachers, desperate for health care, and we're spending so far it's been $240 billion since this war began 8 years ago to try to impose a military solution on political problems.
Well, that's true, but I fear that if we leave, that we're just going to leave them in that state. And some might say, hey, you know what? Bush screwed this up for 7 years, and Obama just barely got into office. Let's give the guy a chance to get it right.
But you can't get it right if you have the wrong strategy. It's a strategy based on total misfocus on what it is. This is not a strategy in which military can solve it unless you go with the counterinsurgency, in which case you put in 500,000 or 600,000 troops, and there's no way that that's going to happen. If you use the numbers that they talk about. Again, you have to remember certain things. 80 to 90% of Afghanistan is small villages. We don't have the ability, the troops, or the desire to occupy every one of those small villages. And the sort of, quote, getting it right, absolutely we should get it right. But that means if we want to help the people of Afghanistan, there's one scenario. If we want to go after terrorists, there's another scenario. And if we decide we want to go to war with the Taliban, then we have a declaration of war and we decide to do that. But right now, you ask 5 people the reason for the war, you get 5 different answers, and that's disastrous. And in terms of our pulling out, look, there's no doubt we're going to leave. It's only a question of when, it's only a question of how, and it's only a question of how much money and how many people are killed before we do. And I would passionately hope that we can use our brains and our intelligence and our power to do good here rather than to go down the same path that's been disastrous for us in so many countries around the world, where we go in with our military might and make lifelong enemies of the populace.
So that'll be my final question then. We're talking to Robert Greenwald from Brave New Films, and he's the director of Rethink Afghanistan, documentary you should check out. How do we leave? If you're President Greenwald and General McChrystal says, I need 40,000 new troops, my guess is you say no. Instead, we're going to do X. What is that X?
Well, I'm pleased to announce my presidential campaign today here on your show, so thank you for the presidential introduction. There are about 30 different potential ways and solutions. In the film, we show NGOs doing wonderful, specific work around schools. We show it around hospitals. You could have a surge of doctors. You could use the money now and employ literally every single man and woman in Afghanistan. You could pull troops back and out of the areas that they're in now and provide relief and economic support. You could work through the United Nations. You could work through other Muslim countries. We put our brain power to this. We could solve this in so many ways, but we've got to get off the heroin that every problem can be solved with military.
Well, on that note, we certainly agree. Robert Greenwald from Brave New Films and Rethink Afghanistan, we really appreciate you joining us on The Young Turks.
My pleasure. Be well.
All right. Thank you.
Watch more clips at theyoungturks.com.